So welcome to another English language A-level video with me, Paul. I'm the subject leader for English at the QE, Darlington. And today things get interesting because we're doing pragmatics. Never leave home without them. Pragmatics, one of the levels, the English language levels. A very, very important level as well. What is pragmatics? It's actually fairly recently invented word because 20 years ago, the word actually didn't even exist. So pragmatics. Pragmatics, as David Crystal says, very famous linguist David Crystal says, pragmatics studies the factors that govern our choice of language in social interaction and the effects of our choice on others. Another definition from another linguist, George Keith. Pragmatics is all about the meanings between the lexis and the grammar and the phonology. Meanings are implied, and the rules being followed are unspoken, unwritten ones. Okay, so when we're looking at pragmatics, we are in the world of implied meanings, and that's called implicature. And we're in the world of inference, which you'll know a fair bit about already from GCSE, I suspect. So a writer implies something, a reader infers something, i.e. interprets the language in a certain kind of way. That is pragmatics. And look at the little cartoon there, which demonstrates how this word awesome can be inferred as meaning completely different things, depending on the context of the situation, depending on the social interaction between these two. So this is the world of pragmatics. So pragmatics depends upon schema. This is all explained in the textbook under pragmatics. I'll just find you the right page. Yes, we're on page 46 in the AQA English language textbook. Schema. Schema is a bundle of knowledge about a concept, person, or event. And schemas are built up from our experience in the world, and they're dynamic, i.e. they're changeable. They can be amended and enlarged. So it's quite an important term to remember, schema. We've probably mentioned it before in terms of context as well. Here's an example. I'd love to travel to Brazil. Right, and so you might have a bunch of disparate bits of knowledge about Brazil. Here are some typical things that when I hear the word Brazil, this is what's going around my mind. I'm thinking about football in those very vibrant coloured shirts the footballers wear. I'm thinking of street carnivals in places like Rio de Janeiro. I'm thinking of samba music and sandy beaches. Maybe I'm thinking of the Amazon rainforest. I'm always thinking of coffee. And I have that image in my mind of that fantastic statue, Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro. So that's my schematic knowledge, limited and stereotypical though it is, of Brazil. So here's a little task then. Test your own schematic knowledge of the following concepts. So write down 8 things which you would associate with each. So get a pen, get a piece of paper. I will flash these on the slide and give yourself 5 minutes to scribble down as many things in your schematic knowledge about the following concepts. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at doing those very varied schematic knowledge bundles. And the thing then to do is, if you've done this with somebody else, so compare your schematic list with your neighbour. And what sorts of differences are there in the kinds of knowledge that you have to your neighbour? Do you have a rich schema, i.e. you know quite a lot about Queen Victoria, or do you have a relatively poor one? You might be surprised to know that I have a relatively poor schema about Love Island. And the other thing is, what might have influenced your schematic knowledge? So it's the sort of thing that makes interesting comparisons. So schematic knowledge. Okay, so if we think of pragmatics and schematic knowledge and how it works in the real world, let's give you some examples. So what can you infer from the language and context of the following? So we've got three women, they're drinking tea during a meeting in a hotel lobby. Shirley says, do you want a biscuit? Alison says, yes, please. Charlotte says, no, thanks. Shirley says to Alison, Charlotte's getting married next month. So pause the video. What schematic knowledge is going on there, which leads Shirley to say Charlotte's getting married next month? Okay, right. It's all to do with cultural illusions here, isn't it? The idea, the importance of dieting before weddings and looking good and being able to get into your wedding dress, and that associating that with the eating of biscuits. So this is inference. This is what's going on in pragmatics, where you have meanings that are being communicated in quite subtle ways. And here are some more examples. So read through the following, and what are the pragmatic messages that are coming through? Okay, so on the first one, a woman asks where the post office is and is told in reply, it's a Sunday. You would need to have the schematic knowledge that post office generally don't open on a Sunday. Secondly, a student says to a friend, nice jacket. Are there lots of charity shops in Peckham? So the student is implying that the item of clothing isn't brand new, that it's come from a charity shop. Nothing wrong with that, I would say, but there's an implied meaning that's going on there. And a father says to his daughter, who's just dropped his mobile phone in the paddling pool, thanks very much, that makes life a lot easier. And you can imagine the prosodic features that are going on there. So here we've got raw sarcasm, where the father is saying one thing, but then meaning entirely the opposite. This is pragmatics. So implied meanings, inferred meanings. It's a very, very important level for English language A level. Along comes a British philosopher called Paul Grice. He does lots and lots of research into the way conversations work. And he comes to the conclusion that actually there are sort of rules that govern conversational maxims, that in order for a conversation to work, then essentially the participants need to adhere to four maxims, four rules. And here they are. So first of all, the maxim of quantity, that in a conversation, the participants don't say too little and they don't say too much. So if the participants are getting that right, they are adhering to the maxim of quantity. We have another Q word, this time it's the maxim of quality. This is the idea that participants generally speak the truth. If you're speaking the truth in your conversation, Paul Grice is arguing that you are adhering to the maxim of quality. Now, there is another one here. This is the maxim of relevance. So this is the idea that you keep relevance to the topic in hand. And then fourthly and lastly, we have the maxim of manner. So this is the idea that your style of speech is clear and it avoids ambiguity. Okay, so Grice is arguing that in most successful conversations, participants tend to adhere to these conversational maxims. If they don't adhere to them, they may be doing it in one of two ways. They may be flouting the maxims. Now, flouting means that you're deliberately breaking the rules, or you may be just violating the maxims, in which case you're sort of unconsciously not following the rules. Let's say a 4-year-old child may be violating the maximum of quantity because they don't say very much when they're being asked a question by an adult. So that's not flouting in that they're not deliberately doing it. They're just unaware of some of these adult conversational maxims. Okay, so adhering to means following. Flouting means deliberately breaking the rule, and violating means unconsciously breaking the rules. There's lots of explanations about these things on the net. If you were on my slideshow, I would be playing you this, where you've got an explanation about Grice's maxims, and then you've got an example from The Simpsons, which is rather amusing. So when you are looking at scripts, it's very good idea to apply Grice's maxims, because quite often script writers are flouting Grice's maxims in order to achieve comic effects. Take this, for example. How are you, Alan? It's been a while. I do like your trousers. I've been looking for some like that for ages. Yes. Do you still live in Middleton St. George? We moved from Middleton St. George on May the 15th, 2015. We bought a 3-bedroom 1950s freehold bungalow on the outskirts of Barnard Castle overlooking a pig farm for £215,000. In 2 years, we may decide to move again, but it really depends on how well our stocks and shares have performed. Oh, fantastic. And how do you like Barnard Castle? It's wonderful. In fact, he said, turning the light on, it's the best town in the UK. It's a magical town where nothing goes wrong. Right, and this continues actually in the booklet. It's on page 83. Your job then is to identify where some of Grice's maxims are being flouted. And it is flouting here because it's deliberately been scripted. Okay, so go through the text, pause it there, and in this bit, which of Grice's maxims are being flouted? Okay, so Grice claimed that when these maxims are broken in conversation, they give rise to implicatures, i.e. implied meanings that the listeners are intended to infer from the speaker's comments. And here's an example that's actually in the AQA textbook. It's on page 47. You've got some speakers discussing Calabro, an all-male singing group who apparently won the 2014 BGT. Conversation A, what did you think of Calabro? What time did you say we were leaving? Conversation B, what did you think of Calabro? I have to move that. Well, they can sing. So have a pause of the video there, and what could you say about the Grice's maxims apparently being flouted or violated, and how that links in with implied meanings? Okay, in the next video, we're going to be doing about face, negative and positive face, but we're going to leave it there for the time being. Thank you. I hope that's been useful.